All right. Let me just do some adjustments. There we go. Can you all see me? Yes. Yes, you can. All right, everybody. Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? And welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show, the show that comes to you every Wednesday at 8 p.m. It has been an interesting week. I'm going to give it a few moments just for more people to join us. How y'all enjoying level 3? The prospect of it. Man, we have a lot to chat about tonight. Shout out to everybody who's joining us at the moment. Deborah Olivier, I see you. Hello, hello. Sebastian Homie, welcome to the stream. A quick check, as I always do. Can you guys hear me and can you guys see me? I always do that check on the show just to make sure that you know. Apparently it's lagging. Is it lagging? How bad is it lagging? Let's see. Just going to fiddle a little bit. Look, the lagging should improve as the stream goes on. Guys, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Shalom. Welcome to another episode, as I said, of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Guys, Sanbonani, Sanbonani, Sanbonani. It is going to be a lit show, as the young ones say, as I always mention. Hey man, that youth flies by real quick. Guys, again, to everybody who's joining, welcome to the stream. Takis Tsinonis in Iraq. Hey man, shout out to you in Iraq, dog. Let me tell you a funny story about Iraq. Or not Iraq per se, but close enough. So I'm out in the at a particular shopping center. I won't name it. I'm out in a particular shopping center, and all of a sudden I hear what can only be described as a group of elderly ladies. They use the mall to like do their walks, and all of a sudden I just hear like this loud shouting voice in unison. Oh my God, it's Bug Daddy! I was like, who? Like I actually also turned around. They were like, it's Bug Daddy. I'm like, who the hell is Bug Daddy? Hey man, and then they like started running towards me, and I'm like, oh, Bug Daddy. What the hell is Bug Daddy? That made me sound like Swamp Thing's second cousin, Bug Daddy from like Iraq, Bug Daddy. That was kind of funny, man. I enjoyed that. It was like a little funny, weird moment, but it was funny. It was funny and it was sweet, because Bog, Deborah, Bog is in B-O-G. It literally made me sound like, Swamp Thing's second cousin or some shit like that. Like, oh, there goes Bog Daddy right there. He's about to jump into the lake. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was, I enjoyed that, little bit of humor. Guys, you've got to laugh. You've got to laugh. You've got to introduce humor into your life, especially given the country we live in. Otherwise, you'll go insane. And yeah. Okay, guys, welcome to it. There's quite a few of us. Welcome to you for joining the stream. Guys, I want to get into this one because there's quite a few things I want us to chew on as topical news items that have made us think, made us laugh, made us angry in my case. But before I do, I always start here now, and I think it should be a tradition on the show, in me thanking those who have become Patreon subscribers to the show. Guys who are literally saying, BDL, here's $1, homie. We've got your back. $1 towards the war chest, $1 towards the Liberty Bus. So I'm going to shout out a few people to this because I must do this. I can't individually send you all messages, but I'm definitely going to shout you guys out here. I'm going to begin with Barent Nippers, homie. Thank you very much. Myrna Kirk, Peter Walker, shout out to you. Jen, meet Jen, thank you so much for your support. Dion, thanks, homie, I see you. Paula Kernan, thank you very much. Dalen Boyd Gibbons, homie, thanks a million. Kevin Taylor, shout out to you. Jacques van Veek, Isabel Pretorius, Anton Roos, Beverly Odendaal, Michelle Saunders, Yaku, Michelle Saunders, sorry again, Byron, meet Nick this time, or sorry, Nick. I just realized what I was doing there. That's kakpani, sorry. Caroline McCann, thank you so much. Omni Activist, shout out to you. Jackie Hume, Jill Hinshaw. Hey, the Hinshaws. You wouldn't be the Hinshaws from KZN, would you? Just out of interest. But shout out to you, Jill, for your support. I see you grow with that $5. Holla at you. Whaley, thank you very much. Shout out to you. Jez, wow, Jez, J-E-Z. I must take a moment to say thank you to you. Jez, $100 support per month. That is incredible. That is incredible. Thank you so much. That's just beyond anything I could have vaguely imagined. Shout out to you, Jez, for getting on the Liberty bus strong, girl. I see you on that one. Delaz, thank you very much for your support. Shout out to you. Vinton Villiers, baie dankie vir die ondersteuning. Ek moet sê dankie na Keith Bissett, Gabonga Kulu, Caitlin Givers, and of course, Sebastian. Guys, thank you so much to every single one of you who have joined the Liberty Bus, who have said, homie, we've got your back as you begin your work, you begin your mission, you begin to essentially fight for the very sort of ideas that create a free, prosperous, and property owning society, the very things that allow us to build a South Africa. You build a nation, as I always say. It's not given to you. You build a nation. So shout out to you guys for literally being on that bus. And yeah, guys, I really, really appreciate that. Stevie, where is the Patreon link? I'm going to link it in the description of this video once I've uploaded it. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Guys, remember, I also work for the Institute of Race Relations. These are the very homies that literally backed me when I started this mission. So please, if you can, consider supporting them by becoming a friend of the IRR. That is their crowdfunding campaign. Super easy, just SMS your name to 32823. An SMS will cost you R1. Terms and conditions do apply. So I'm going to give you a call and sign you up for a debit order. Super easy. But they've had my back, and I'd really like you to have their back too, especially because they are in the battle of ideas. Mary Lou Murray, good evening to you, and holla at you at that R21. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Guys, for those who are asking how they can donate and support, I will put that information in the link below. Guys, let's get into the show. It's going to be a very lit one. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to get into. Guys, I don't think you understand just how much the balance of forces are beginning to coalesce. South Africans are beginning to get the message. And God bless those who have literally stood up and they said, I'm going to act. I'm going to do something about this because I will not sit down. I will not sit back and watch politicians ruin my quality of life, ruin my family. So there's a lot to get into in that regard. Let me just open up my notes. My notes army. Oh, man. The place that I'm going to begin at. Wow, guys. Wow. Was it not just the best news ever? Oh my goodness. And for those of you who are wondering, just give me a second. I'm gonna open up, I just need to open up my YouTube so I can also see the comments because they fire very quickly on the screen here. But guys, I'm gonna start on a good news vibe. Man, it's been a fantastic week. Oopsie daisy, there'll be a little bit of feedback. Let me just turn the speakers off. There we go. Now I can see comments properly. Guys, here's where I'm going to begin. Because I've been depressed and I've been thrown off by the slide and the negativity and essentially the tyranny of evil men in government for quite a while now. And it's actually begun to get to me. And as I mentioned in my last vlog, I'm not a machine, guys. I'm not a robot. I'm not a, I'm not a news anchor where I'm sort of reading off a script, sort of in a rote way without emotion. I'm a human being. I'm a human being, and the things that happen to fellow South Africans register to me They register to me on an emotional level and the intellectual level. And it's on that basis, it is on that basis that the lockdown and the pain that it's incurred on South African families, that's where the anger has sort of resonated from and bubbled with great fury until it spat out in that viral vlog that I put out. But I'm also someone who looks for good stories around people who enjoy those three things that I talk about that are part of my ideas bank that I fight for. The idea of defending and fighting for life, liberty, and property rights. These things are critically important in terms of the ideas that I push out, I fight for, in conjunction, of course, with my values, the idea of faith, the flag, and the family. But before I get into any of this, the issue of property rights is a super important one, to actually prosecute. I'll tell you why. South Africans, all South Africans, by the way, in history, have never really enjoyed a quality of life that respects their property rights and their freedoms. Whether it's white South Africans, black South Africans, Indian coloreds, as I've always mentioned, the race has never been, from my perspective, the race has never been important, but rather it's looking at the fact that as a society, the various iterations of government we've had, from the very first settlers who came here to right now, you and I sitting in front of each other, talking to each other, have never really accorded South Africans the sort of life, liberty, and property rights that a truly free society should accord in a free society. So why do I bother with the issue of property rights? Because it's super important. It's super important. I've mentioned to you before that if you look at the importance of families in society, what do you think motivates and drives you to wake up every day and do what you need to do? What do you, take a moment and really think about that. Why do you wake up and literally at times slave to the bone, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're someone who works, you're an employee somewhere, or, what motivates you? And I put it to you that it's 9 times out of 10, it's for the benefit of you, the individual, and your family in particular. Look, as a classical liberal, I talk a lot about the individual, but really we're a family society, and often we do things for the benefit of family. And on that basis, you should live in a free society, a property-earning society that allows you to accumulate your labor by way of savings, and then accord those savings, or rather bequeath those savings to the people who you care about. So in simple English, you should be able to accumulate property and have rights over that property, and have the ability, the freedom, the liberty, if you will, to transfer that property to who you see fit. So on your deathbed, and your family surrounds you, and it's your final moments, you can die peacefully and slip off peacefully, knowing that everything that you've worked for will go to the very people that you love. That's what we expect of a free society. You don't expect that the things that you've now built up, the things that you now have come to own, should just go into the hands of politicians. Of course you don't want that. So the issue of property rights is super important. The idea that I own something, I worked for it, I own it, I have secure title of it, and I choose who I transfer it to. That's the issue of property rights. So I must circle back then to what made me super happy this week, is the case of a farmer in the Northwest. I see a lot of stories say it's Limpopo, but I always thought it was Northwest, but I'll go with what the reports say. Here is a 79-year-old farmer, Mr. David Rakgase. Mr. David Rakgase, 79-year-old farmer, beautiful story. This is a man, a black South African, almost 20 years ago, well over 20 years ago actually, received a parchment of land called the Nooit Gedacht Farm, and it has been literally an over 18-year fight for this man who farms this land successfully. He is a beef cattle farmer, and when he received the land back, I think 20 plus years ago, he basically received it with what was a loan of 50 Nguni cattle that were to be used for breeding. That's all he received. So he received the land, and 50 herd of cattle basically for him to grow a business out of. Now, ordinarily, you would think, given the sort of stereotypes that go out there, oh no, an up-and-coming farmer, oh my goodness, given the uphill they need to go through, this was bound to fail. On the contrary, this man, over the last 20 years, on this parchment of land, has built a successful, by the sounds of it, agribusiness that is booming. Listen to this. He was loaned these 50 cattle back in those days. This was when that part of the world, that's why I'm saying it's northwest, because it used to be Popototwana. The Popototwana gave him this land. And he was loaned these 50 cattle, Nguni cattle, sorry. And at the time, this is now 20 years later, as he's looking to buy this land, because he's been working it for 20 plus years. Now he's looking to buy this land, and it was sold to him by the state at a certain price. And then the state reneged on that and literally engaged this guy in a legal battle for over 20 years. Over 20 years, basically playing cat and mouse with this guy. Meanwhile, this homie's working hard. He's building this business. At the time of him putting his founding affidavit, in other words, when the legal battle began with the state, with this government of filthy lefty commies who don't want people to actually own land. And I'll get into that just now, because that's the reasoning behind why he had to fight government. It was ideology, nothing more. It had nothing to do with him being a black farmer. It had nothing to do with him being an unsuccessful farmer, because he's clearly successful. But it had everything to do with the ideology that the ANC pursues, which is one of socialism and their doctrine, of the National Democratic Revolution, which basically asserts that politicians ought to be in control of all levers and all means of production, including the ownership of land. In fact, you'll hear the EFF say this, like, oh, we must nationalize the land and blah, 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 or rather expropriate the land without compensation, because their vision, their twisted, commie vision is for all land in this country to be owned by the state and for you and me to go hat in hand begging politicians to be able to live on parchments of land. But we'll get to that. And that's both the ANC and the EFF, by the way, who hold that view. So this man, Mr. Rakgase, is a hero to all of us. This man is a hero. He should be celebrated on the streets of the Northwest, venerated, because he took on the state and he won. He took on the communists and he won in court. And that's what I'm saying to you. You need to get up and do now. Get up and support me in doing exactly this. Take on the commies. Stop fearing these people. Stop fearing these lefty politicians. I'm sorry, I know I got charged up, but because you can see who my sort of heroes are. I'm not alone in this fight. Don't think it's just me. Just because I have the platform and, I chat on social media, I'm not alone. I am not alone. The vast majority of South Africans out there are sensible people, but they've never lived in a society that gives them ideas around what a free society should look like. They live in a society where most of their politics, there's very little, in the way of intellectual diversity in our politics, and that's all they know. The leftism, I saw the buffering symbol and I just took a pause. And the point I was making before you lost me is that, and I want to revisit this point. Guys, I'm not alone. Because I can see sometimes in the comments, people go, hey, Big Daddy, we're supporting you, homie, but we're feeling the sense of hopelessness. We're hoping you can do something about it. Guys, it's not about me. I know that sounds weirdly counterintuitive to say, but it's really not about me. And I want to revisit my mission, because I think you'll understand it now in the context of when you see stories like this. I put it to you that the vast majority of South Africans in this country are actually rather sensible, conservative people. Sensible. But you will never see it in our politics, because our politics lacks the intellectual diversity. It lacks intellectual diversity. It's mostly leftist, center-left, and far-left. And that includes the DA, by the way. Because full disclosure, I used to support the DA. I used to work, in my earlier years, I used to work for the DA, and that was when it was still a classically liberal party. It fought for the values of liberty, the idea of the individual, the primacy of the individual, according that individual the most amount of power and resources in a society, and limiting the role of the state. That used to be the DA. That was the DA I joined, unwittingly, because I wasn't really the political type. That's a long story. But the DA became absorbed by the very sort of politics that they're immersed in a day-to-day basis, which is this weird attempt to try and be populist on the left. And I'm seeing some comments as saying ANC light. To an extent, yes. And that hurts because there's a lot of people in that party who I know are genuine, ardent classical liberals. But they get drowned out by the blabbity types in that party. They get drowned out by the social justice types in that party. They get drowned out by the racialists, the people who view things through the lens of race. The sort of people who say, you know, I used to vote ANC, but now I vote DA. So, it's irrelevant who you vote for. What ideas do you actually hold? Because you could vote DA and still hold the same sort of ANC crap ideas of racialism, of state dirigism, of statism, of socialism, and you could literally don a blue t-shirt. This is why I keep saying to people, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to tell people who to vote for. That's not my job. That's not my job. What I see as my mission is to go out into society and actually push the ideas that I'm arguing South Africans should rally around. The ideas that build a nation, that build an economy, that see a free, prosperous, and property-earning society, a non-racial society. Do the groundwork. Do the groundwork. Because I'm telling you now, political parties that claim to hold my views don't do the groundwork. And that's their folly. And I'm going to be a little critical here of even the ZACP, the South African Capitalist Party. I'm sure some of you voted for them. Great ideas, fantastic group of people, but they didn't do the groundwork. You cannot win this war. You cannot win the battle of ideas through just this and being in the media. You've got to do the groundwork. You've got to do the groundwork. It's critically important. People must know you in Khayelitsha in the shacks. People must know you in a tiny little village or in Limpopo. People must know you in Kakamas, Northern Cape. People must know you, damn it, in former Bantustan areas of this country that still, to this day, still live as if they were back in that day because of the poor service delivery, etc. They must know you. They must know you. They must be able to say, hey, you big daddy. No, I know him. I shook his hand. He came here. He respected us. He gave us the ideas. He didn't just come and say, here's a t-shirt, here's a food parcel. He gave me something I can hold on to, an idea that I can fight for, that I can now rally my neighbors around. That's what I want. That's my mission. That's my mission. Because I'm telling you now, if you don't do the ground war, if you're just depending on this, the air war, then you can have the most fantastic ideas for what a society, a free society should be. It won't reach people because the vast majority of people don't access YouTube and, you know, podcasting and blah, blah, blah. Although those things have a place, don't get me wrong. Hence, I always say to you, I have an air war and a ground war. But the ground war is where I want to be. That's what people who fund me on Patreon, that's what people who support me are supporting. It's mostly the ground war. Me being able to say, guys, I'm building a small team of individuals with an idea who are going to march through the institutions of society and government and change them. How do you think the Brexit people won? They didn't win because they were just, you know, on media and it was all fun and games. No, people were hitting the ground, door to door, speaking to people, and they were in a battle of ideas because their opponents were doing the exact same thing. And I shared that picture of the EFF and that weird commie seminar they were holding, which was broadcast on Soweto TV. It was a Gauteng TV, one of those two. They also understand the battle of ideas to a large extent. They understand the battle of ideas. So now you see who I am going toe-to-toe with, rather, in communities. You see the importance of having a war chest, if you will, that backs someone like me. Food for thought. Food for thought. Because you see it in moments like these, guys. You see it in moments like these where people on the ground, ordinary South Africans like Mr. David Rakgase, the farmer from the Northwest, who wins this momentous case against the state, for him to have the right the liberty to own his piece of Africa, to own his little piece of Africa that he's been working and building enterprise on. This is a capitalist. This is a capitalist individual. If I went to Mr. Rakgase, and I'm really hoping to have him on the show, I'm sort of doing the back work to try and get him onto the show. I'm going to be at that farm. I'm going to interview that brilliant man, that hero, on his farm, on his land. Man, oh man, oh man. I'm even excited saying stuff like that. I'm excited to be able to say something like that. That this man can say, this is mine. And really, I say mine, this belongs to my family. Guys, can you not imagine anything more beautiful than that? Of being able to say, I defeated the leftist politicians who wanted to take this away from me, and this is now mine. He made a comment. And he said something along the lines of, because this man he's 79, turning 80. And he made a comment saying, you know, when he dies, he'll die in peace. Because now he knows he can actually pass this on to his family. Now he knows that the over 2 decades of work, blood, sweat, and tears of building this agribusiness will go to the people that he wants it to go to, not the fucking state, not politicians, not those greedy, filthy communists, but to the people he cares about. How can you not get emotional at something like that? You know, we talk a lot in this country about, you know, land restitution and all that jazz, but we forget that there's real people behind these stories, man. There are real South Africans behind these stories. People, families, guys. Come on. Why does this not register on a beautiful emotional level for South Africans? To say that this is why we fight for this. And that it doesn't have to be a racial fight. It really doesn't. That's the distraction from politicians. That is the distraction of politicians. Meanwhile, they rack up all this land, all this property under the name of the state. The state has no business being the majority landowner in any society. It really doesn't. Give property and land over to people. Don't snatch property or land from one group to give to the other. That's not how you build a free and prosperous society. That's not how you... Man, y'all don't hear me. Y'all don't hear me. I'm going to repeat that. If you want to take land reform seriously in this country, then you've got to be a government that respects, firstly, property rights. You've got to be a government that respects that if you are going to have a land restitution program, that you respect those people that you give the land to with actual solid property ownership. Title ownership of that land, giving them the ability to leverage and work that land and actually build wealth off of that land. Don't make people permanent tenants of the country of their birth, which is what the ANC wants to do, which is what the FF wants to do. They are more than happy to be the politicians that own everything and then lease it out to poor black individuals, because everything has to have a racial slant in this country. So that the likes of Mr. Rakgase, to me, is a hero. Because here's a man who says, I want nothing from the state. I don't want charity. I don't want your pity. Hot damn it, I will fight. I will fight to get what literally is mine, that I've worked for, that I've literally created wealth in. And he did it. Oh my goodness, he did it. So he's a hero to me. People like this are heroes. These are the sort of people that you will see on the BDL show. I just heard a buzz. Sorry guys, I live in South Africa, so when you hear noises, your first instinct is to check. We literally live that horror movie life, where you hear like a, oh, what was that? I think I need to go see. Whilst people shout on the screen, don't do it! Don't go in there, motherfucker! Oh, he went into the room. Sorry, I took a little deviation there. But yeah, guys, like, You know, the likes of Mr. Rakgase to me are absolute heroes, and I will have him on the show. I will. I commit this. I commit this. I will be in my buggy driving to that man's farm, and we're going to have a chat on his land. And I want to see the smug satisfaction on his face as we talk about how he defeated these lefty politicians, man. That's the conversations I'm going to bring you on the show as I travel this country. I want you to see ordinary people, gewone mense wat woon in gemeenskappe around this country, them being the ones who say, you know what, I took on the state and I won. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Before I do, let me just quickly say what the court said. Look, after 20 years basically of battling the state, and actually I began here. Remember I said to you that this man actually grew a business. He's not a welfare recipient. He's an industrious farmer. You know, from that 50 cattle that were loaned to him, he built his business at the point of where he was submitting his founding affidavit in the fight against the state. At that stage already, he had built his business to 147 cattle. Excuse me, just give me a moment. I've read something a little bit wrong here. Okay, this was written badly, but I think what they're saying is he received an initial loan of 50 Nguni cattle, and at the beginning of his fight with the state over 20 years ago, he had already grown it to 147 cattle, and today the total number of livestock on the farm is 500 cattle, 30 pigs, 80 sheep, and 130 goats, guys. Come on. Come on, man. This guy's out here working. This guy's out here working. What a hero. What an absolute hero. And all he wanted is for the state to sell him the land so he can continue to grow the business and not face the threat of some filthy government official or some filthy politician lauding the fact that they own his land on his behalf with threats of like being expropriated or whatever. That's what he wouldn't want. He didn't want. And I put it to you, that's what the millions of South Africans in this country want. The right to say, I own this. No, I don't want to swear, but no filthy commie politician should have any inkling of a thought that they can come and threaten me with my ownership of this land. Hey man, I can tell you stories of what I've had to do to defend our family land, but that's another day, another story for another day. But in any event, the High Court ruled in his favor in September. The High Court had ruled in his favor, in the High Court. The High Court had ruled in his favor back in 2019 already, that the sale agreement should finally be signed and that the original offer of 621,000 Rand be upheld and that he be sold the land. So again, he's not looking for a handout. This man's like, no, I'll pay top dollar for this land. Anyway, I'm going to have him on the show. I'm going to have him on the show. And I want you to hear real stories of real South Africans who are taking on the state. And just because you don't see it in the mainstream media, lefties as they are, the journalists who often write, doesn't mean that the stuff isn't happening. And that these are the people that I'm arguing to, I will be rallying. All right, guys, I'm going to move on. I'm going to close this one. I'm going to move on because there has been other interesting stuff. If you watched my last vlog, I literally lost it when you could see the physical effects of the lockdown. And I made the clear distinction. It's the lockdown that is creating this poverty, not COVID, not coronavirus. It's the lockdown. And that when you then extrapolate broadly and look at the past 26 years and even beyond, you'll realize that all poverty in this country can literally be tied back to a government decision, a politician making decisions. 100% of the growing poverty rates in this country is due to the bad government decisions that we have to endure in this country. That is literally a cold, hard fact. Let me be precise and specific. Buffalo Bill takes to, sorry, for those who may be wondering who I'm talking about, Buffalo Bill is Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the Minister of COGTA. I call her Buffalo Bill for, law. Anyway, Buffalo Bill, in a briefing this week, of course, you don't see Cyril anymore. He's back in Buffalo's hole, and Precious, the little fluffy white dog, aka Beyitele, is busy holding him hostage in the hole. Sorry, I did say I'd let this joke go, but it's too damn funny. Anyway, Buffalo Bill appeared before us, and she was basically saying, she was in Parliament, really, not in Parliament, but appearing before Parliament, and the words she uttered reflected what the SARS commissioner had said back in February already. Excuse me, not February, but at the beginning of the lockdown, which is SARS is going to miss its collection target by as much as a third of what they ordinarily collect in a financial year. Let that sink in, by nearly as much as a third. But Buffalo Bill gave it a number this week, and basically said the South African Revenue Service, is projecting a revenue collection shortfall of 250 billion rand as a result of the lockdown. The article says COVID, it's not. It's a result of the lockdown. That's what's destroying the economy. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Nkosazana Buffalo Bill Dlamini-Zuma told members of the National Council of Provinces, this is Parliament, lower house of Parliament, this during a sitting on Tuesday morning, so this week. This is what she basically said. Now give that a moment, let that sink in. Let that sink in, because again, it further emphasizes the point I was making, which is 100% of the poverty rate in this country, 100% of the rising numbers of poverty, are government related. The fact that SARS will not be able to collect money from the economy in this country, guess why that is? Politicians having made the decision to follow this asinine approach of locking down an economy for extended periods with asinine regulations, like people not being able to smoke or drink or do this or do that. All things that have nothing really to do with fighting COVID. And then cynically, you now see the politicians shifting to suddenly say, this COVID has shown us the deep fault lines in South African society, like inequality and poverty. I'm quoting Buffalo Bill now, where she says, we've seen hunger, poverty, unemployment, and unjust conditions, poor quoting here by the journalist, which our people live, and the unjust conditions which our people live under, and we can no longer hide from that. Really? Really, Buffalo? Y'all cannot hide from that? Come on, man. This is a clown ball situation here. Take a moment and remember that Buffalo Bill is the same minister who this month literally had suggested that this lockdown period and the destruction of the economy is a fantastic thing because, as she said, quoting the commie, let me just find the quote, sorry. These were her words. So it's surprising when she says, we shouldn't hide from this poverty and blah, 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 blah. But these are her words. About this, the collapse of the economy under the lockdown, these opportunities, open quote, these opportunities call for more sacrifices and, if needs be, what Amilcar Cabral, a commie, called class suicide, wherein we must rally behind the common cause. The coronavirus knows no class, race, gender, or geographic location, close quote. That's what that filthy commie said to us as South Africans. That's what Buffalo Bill said to us as South Africans. That she would be happily see the country commit quote unquote class suicide for her to be able to, and her cronies at least, to then be able to enact their commie agenda. So the ANC are quite happy to destroy societies, destroy this economy in order to fulfill their national democratic revolution, which is the communist doctrine that they follow as a party, a doctrine which they recommit themselves every year and specifically at every elective Congress. Excuse me, because a lot of people say, oh, but Big Daddy, the ANC is not communist. They're not real communists. Guys, when someone says they are something, fucking believe them. Believe them. Do not be the sort of people who go, oh, no, but they're really nice people. They just say this because, it's just words. Don't be those people. Our neighbors to the north, Zimbabweans, made the exact same mistake. Even as the snake was showing itself, was peeping out from the grass, and you could see the snake. People were like, no, that wasn't a snake. That was just like an optical illusion. Where are the Zimbabweans today? Where are the Zimbabweans today? If they're not here in South Africa, scrounging for work, unfortunately, or the more well-off ones fled to, first world countries, especially the more educated ones. And who's left in that country? Absolutely the poorest of the poor, suffering. Why? Because people refuse to believe a politician when they tell you exactly who they are. When an evil politician tells you, hey, listen, I'm a commie, I want to take everything, including what you own, just dish it out to my friends. Oh, no, Cyril doesn't really mean that. He's fantastic. We love Cyril. Cyril, he's a funny player, man. Go Cyril. Meanwhile, Cyril's in a dark cave somewhere. Just kidding. But no, seriously, guys, we need to start listening to politicians when they tell us exactly who they are. To come back to this, Buffalo Bill is the very minister who told us that she's quite happy to see this country literally go through the ringer, or at least commit quote-unquote class suicide, so that they can now enact this fantastic little dystopia of a socialist communist South Africa. And you've even heard the likes of Cyril parrot this nonsense, obviously using coded language like, this is an opportunity for us to enact a radical economic transformation, code for socialism and communism, where they take over everything and we, the citizenry, have to come to them with a begging bowl. I don't want to live like that, do you? And I told you in that vlog that the vast majority of South Africans in this country do not want to be state dependents. They want the opportunity. They want the opportunity to be able to say, I gained an education, I gained a solid set of skills. I'm able to compete with the best in the world and create something that's mine, that generates income. And from that income, savings. And from those savings, being able to buy a better quality of life, better healthcare, better education, safety and security, you name it. That's the formula right there, guys. But no, sometimes we're like, no, let the state look after these people and blah, blah, blah. Don't say shit like that. Don't say shit like that. Take a moment and respect your fellow South African and say, you know what? This person's no different to me. They want the opportunity to be industrious. They want the opportunity to be able to build something. But they've never had the politics that speaks that language. We've had 26 years in this country of a conversation of rights and what's due to me and entitlements, and very little in the way of a conversation around responsibility and what I can build. And then we're surprised when people look to the state for things. Worse yet, some of us demonize them. Oh, look at those people. How dare they go to the state running for help? And let's talk about that state. Because even when they are in a position to do what they want to do, which is, control everything and be the provider, the largest single provider of goodies, and income in a society, well, how do they fare? Let's look at the record of evidence. The South African Social Security Agency, Sassa, appeared for Parliament this week, and MPs asked them the question, all right, guys, you said you want to look after society, and this is your daily bread, so to speak. And, as an ANC, I suppose, you talk a lot about, how the state should do this, the state should do that. Let's look at the record of history of what happens when the state does take over things. So, as I said, SASSA, the South African Social Security Agency, appears before Parliament, and MPs ask them a straightforward question. You guys shut down the economy, People lost their jobs. And then the president appeared before this country and said, oh, no, don't worry. We'll look after people. We'll give them a state allowance of 350 Rand per month, just over this period whilst they shut down the economy. Obviously, they use coronavirus as an excuse, but really it's because they shut down the economy. So MPs then ask the reasonable question, how many people have received this grant? Because surely millions of people applied. We know millions have lost their jobs. So how many people applied? All right, so here are the numbers. Excuse me. So almost in the first few days of this announcement, 4.9 million applicants. 4.9 million applicants. 4.9 million fellow South Africans who were driven to the point of having absolutely nothing, scrambled to now try and get this 350 Rand, a lifeline. Of that 4.9 million, Sassa then decides, because now remember, you're under state control. This is what they want. This is what they want. Of that 4.9 million, Sassa determines that, oh no, only 2.6 million unemployed people of that number actually qualify for the grant itself in terms of the stipulations they gave. So politicians are like, okay, or at least the MPs, sorry, were like, okay, cool. Of that 2.6 million, how many actually got the grants? Answer the damn question. So after a lot of pontificating by officials, the fat cat officials, then it eventually comes out that only 10 people out of 2.6 million people, only 10 people have been given this grant. Guys, are you hearing this? Millions of South Africans are going hungry. And they're not some abstract in the distant thing that you can't see. In my previous vlog, I told you that I'm on the streets of this country. I've driven from Pretoria to Johannesburg. And you can see it. Look at your street corners. Look at your main streets, your main roads. You can see people clamoring for some form of opportunity, clamoring for some loose change. Some openly saying, I just want food. Y'all know I'm very, very emo when I told you the story of a mama and her 3 kids who literally said, Big Daddy, I can't even trade, which is what I used to do. I was a street trader. I can't even trade to look after myself because the moment I set up my little stall, here comes Officer Bacon and Constable Ham telling me to put this away, or also confiscated, disrupting my stall, etc. Harassment. They harass her when she trades, when she does something productive to look after herself. And then she says to me, and this is what broke my heart, but Big Daddy, ever since I came to this corner, I sat here with my kids and I started begging. Not a single police officer has bothered me. Not a single police officer, not a single JMPD officer has bothered her. So she's fine. She's okay. If she's on the street as a dependent, begging, the state doesn't bother her because ultimately, and I've demonstrated this to you, that's what politicians want. But the moment she does something for herself and she says, no, I've got hands, I've got a mind, I can trade, I can build something, I can earn my keep. No, the state comes in with state guns and violence. How dare you, ma'am? Kicking her goods on the floor, confiscating some of it, eating it in front of her, in that sort of like, ha, look, I have power over you. I can eat your stock and you can do nothing to me as a police officer. Real story, guys. Real story, I'm telling you. You've got to understand the nature of your government and the politicians in it, to then understand why that sort of cruelty happens and how it breaks the very people I care about, South African families. And when you understand that, when you piece it together, you're then not surprised and you're rightly outraged when those same fat cat officials who earn their salary regardless of how they perform. I can tell you now, the officials of the South African Social Security Agency, Sassa, the welfare organization, they earn their salaries regardless of how they perform. So even though they've failed these 2.6 million South Africans by only giving 10 this grant, guess who's going to get a fat salary at the end of the month? Where now you get nothing, but them, mwah, it's It's good, it's nice for them. And then people wonder why I get incredibly angry when I see my fellow South Africans done with this one. So that I then ask the question, as I conclude my thoughts on this story, look at what things really look like when government is in control of your life. And I'm telling you now, guys, and I've made this point I think in the previous episode of the BDL Show, that the ANC is going to have a tough time rallying people to vote for it in the upcoming election. It's going to have a very tough time. They saw that, and that was one of the considerations politically for why they just gave up on the idea of this hard lockdown as a means of demonstrating state capacity. They just gave up on it. They lost the appetite for a hard lockdown because they realized that it was their constituency who were first in line to get the beatings from the government, to get the beatings from the state. And let me tell you why I'm saying they realized this. Why it's not just a conspiracy, but there's a little bit of evidence to point in this direction. This week, the Independent Electoral Commission, the people who that run our elections, the Independent Electoral Commission, let me just go to that story. The IEC is looking to postpone the 2021 elections, the local government elections for next year. They want to postpone it. And I told you that this would happen because the ANC made a calculation. They saw that, hey guys, we've literally fucked with our base here. We've fucked with our base. The very people who we could historically count on to back us. They screwed with those people, they relegated them to hunger, and they sicked the army, they sicked the police on them. It was mostly poor black South Africans who were being humiliated, having their asses kicked by soldiers, and in the case of Mr. Collins Khosa, who I'll get to today because there's an update on his case, were murdered by the security forces set upon them by the very ANC politicians in this country. Now we're hearing that the IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, is in consultation to possibly postpone next year's local government elections due to the coronavirus pandemic, of course. They will blame the coronavirus pandemic. This is according to the spokesperson, Kate Bapela. Bapela said the commission had not yet made a decision on a possible date for the election, adding that they would consult political parties and various other stakeholders, including Parliament, the concerned government departments, and of course, the Municipal Demarcation Board. Whole lot of waffle to basically say, guys, we're nervous, and our politicians are putting pressure on us to postpone this thing because they know it's going to be a bloodbath. And you've got to understand, if you look at the data around elections, the ANC always does poorly at local government elections. The last one was testament to that. That's the one that literally saw the ANC lose all the major metros. This is hard evidence. The ANC always do badly at local government elections. They fail, they struggle to bring out their support base in those elections. And that's what allowed the DA, for instance, to be able to hobble together those now failed coalitions that have fallen apart. So you've got to understand that the ANC, in the calculation around this lockdown, that's one of perhaps the biggest driving forces that literally made them say, guys, no. We're losing appetite for this thing because we see the writing on the wall. And you've got to understand, municipalities are a big cash cow for politicians, especially ANC politicians. That's where most of the tenders are, for instance. So if you start losing municipalities across the country, goodbye to your tenders. Goodbye to looking after the crony, the crooked cadres who feed off of the state in this country and then call themselves business people. Laughable. So of course the IEC will say shit like this. These are things you need to watch out for because, as I've said, 100% of the misery and the bad economic outcomes in this country are literally stem from government and politicians. And there's a spin-off. There's an effects that come from this, both in terms of the economy continuing to suffer and of course a deterioration in the political life of the country. Gotta pay attention to these things, guys. So it's something you need to watch because I can assure you, if they do this, yeah, even I'll finish that line. Guys, let me move on. Because it's been a very interesting week. Stuff is happening, guys. There's a lot of movement. There is a lot of movement. Speaking about movement, I did make mention that on the show, I'm going to start bringing you a lot, and I made mention of this last week, sorry, that this week would be a very big week in terms of some of the major pressure groups taking government to court. And I just want to give you a quick feedback of where a lot of these various groupings are, because sometimes it's kind of hard to keep track of who's where and who's challenging what in the courts. I'm going to begin with AfriForum, because at the moment, I am loving the work that AfriForum and Sassa are doing in particular. Those two, I think, are the standout for me. AfriForum will be in court tomorrow in Pretoria. I'll be there to bring you coverage of that, where they're taking on this notion of quarantining people by using force. I spoke to their representative and someone who's taken this matter to court. So basically, they'll be in court this week, I think tomorrow. The COGTA, this is the ministry, that's run by Buffalo Bill, have filed answering papers finally because they've been stalling, and the matter will be heard tomorrow, hopefully. This is according to their attorney. They've prepared, this is AfriForum, they prepared a draft order which they expect to be stamped and confirmed by the court. So they're going to take that matter on tomorrow. I will bring you that in an interview with their attorney, Daniel Iloff. And I'm going to compile a little package for you guys, just tracking everybody and where things are at the moment. I did also speak to Sassa, who their CEO, Pete Leroux, by the way. And if you're a small business, guys, support Sassa. They definitely do some fantastic work. They're going to be tackling the state on basically its insidious attempt to introduce this permitting regime. The idea that any business person in this country, before you can even trade, must have a permit. So basically, you must go, again, hat in hand, beg some government official who knows nothing about your business, who knows nothing about your industry or your sector. You, the entrepreneur, are expected to go to that filthy official or filthy politician and beg for them to give you a permit to trade. So they're going to be fighting that in court, because one of the arguments they're making is with this, with the requirement that was attempted by politicians to institute permits over this lockdown period, it was a backdoor way for the ANC government to basically introduce what they've always wanted to do, which is amend the Business Act to allow for the state to force you to have a permit if you're going to trade. Just think about the ramifications for that. So I will also cover that tomorrow. I'm going to try and have a chat with Mr. Pete Leroux from Sassa. We'll have a chat exactly, Ngobi. So I just saw a comment there from Ngobi saying a permit equals a bribe. Of course it is. Of course it is. Whenever politicians and officials appropriate for themselves that sort of power to decide winners and losers in society, or you best believe that those who do the winning in society are the ones who pay that chocho, who pay that bribe to the officials. So that honest, ordinary, and Elizabeth Kirk saying permitpreneurs, of course, absolutely. It's a filthy damn system. And this is why it has to be resisted. Your liberty hinges around the work that is done by organizations like AfriForum, organizations like Sassa, organizations like the Institute of Race Relations. And I'm going to get to this other group now. They're not necessarily an organization, but they're also in court. They've sort of broadly called themselves concerned citizens. And this includes people you've seen on the show, by the way, guys like Mpiake Dlamini, Tammy Jackson. They're taking on the state. They filed papers in the Western Cape High Court to basically take on the constitutionality of this National Coronavirus Command Council, this super body that is led by Buffalo Bill and Dick Tracy. They're basically taking on, excuse me, guys. My silence is kicking in. They're basically taking on the National Coronavirus Command Council. And the simple question is, what statute, what law forms this group, this cabal that is led by Buffalo Bill? What forms it? And what gives it the power to make decisions? What makes it so different to the ministers, the shitload of ministers that we pay taxes to fund for them to make decisions? Why did he have to create this committee, and on what basis in the law? Their papers also go into detail around who exactly is on this command council, how are decisions made, and again, the most important part is, where is the record of this? Where are the record of the decisions they make? Why does it operate under cloak and dagger? Why? And of course, secondly, their particular court challenges some of the regulations themselves directly. For example, the no gym and some of this asinine stuff, no cigarettes and blah blah blah. Like, on what basis, on what rational basis did they make this decision? And I can tell you now, the lawyers who I'm talking to basically said these guys stand a very strong chance of dismantling this whole house of cards that the politicians have created in this National Coronavirus Command Council. That if the arguments are sound, they literally stand the chance of losing this one. So you've got to support these guys in this challenge. And I know there's quite a few other guys who are taking on the state. And for the smokers out there, because I know you're wondering, FETA is taking on the state. FETA, of course, is the... sorry, I'm just trying to remember the acronym. Give me a second. Come on, man. FETA. Where is the acronym? For some weird reason, I've deleted the... That's what happens when you start getting cocky. There we go, sorry. The Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association. This is an association basically representing some of the smaller producers for the main part. Now, they're basically saying, stuff it, we're going to court. Because there's no legal or rational or sound basis for why the state is arguing that it now should have the power to ban smoking. Like, on what basis do they make that decision? And it's not enough for Buffalo Bill to say, it's for health reasons that we're banning the cigarettes. There's absolutely no reason for that. What law says she can do that? Remember, all decisions made by politicians aren't just willy-nilly type stuff, or they shouldn't be. They should be found and based on law. And these guys, I support them. Again, I'm not a smoker, but I definitely support them. And look at how the state is frustrating these guys. So it's been brought up by FETA as an urgent matter, but the hold up is basically on government side. It's been ordered by the High Court, excuse me, it has now been ordered by the High Court, the government that is, has been ordered by the High Court to provide FETA with a record of decision showing how it came to the decision to impose the ban in the first place. That is a dangerous line for a court or a judge to ask you to provide for if you don't have that record of decision making, which circles back to the other court case that I argued that the concerned citizens will be basing their arguments in and to. On what basis are decisions being made by politicians? And I'm telling you now, if they can't answer that, you will literally see this country's courts basically dismantling the house of cards that the politicians have created. Miss T saying, please do the voice again. No. No, I'm sorry. I won't. I'm too afraid. Buffalo Bill might come through this door saying, "Oh, don't you want to help me with the sofa? No, don't worry about the panel van. I'm going to abduct you." No. Sorry, I really do love Hannibal and the Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs. Y'all can tell that now. Anyway, moving on. Man, before I move on, where the hell is the DA in all of this? They've gone really quiet around what the court action they had said they were going to do. Where the hell are the other opposition parties? ACDP, where are y'all? Where are these people? They seem to be very loud in Parliament, talking all that good shit, whilst they earn their nice fat salaries. But when the people of this country are hurting and they need you, where are you? Y'all disappear. They'll disappear like ether. Anyway, before that pisses me off. Yeah, guys, so I'm going to be watching all of these. I'm going to be watching these with bated breath. I will bring you regular updates. I'm also going to bring you conversations with some of these interest groupings. I'm planning a nice, massive episode, maybe even next week, where I bring them all in and we have a conversation here live for you guys to be able to watch and even pepper them with questions. You know, the guys like Sarkeliega and AfriForum. Hopefully a FETA representative might be willing to join me on the show. So I'm working on that for next week. So holding thumbs that all comes together. Because again, I think some of these guys are heroes. These are the people that we need to be backing. Because they're literally fighting for your freedoms, your liberties. And it's more than just about this lockdown now. It's about setting the precedent going forward that no filthy fucking government in this country should ever arbitrarily take away people's rights and freedoms for whatever thing, whether it's COVID or Ebola at some stage, if that ever comes down here, whatever. No government should ever have the power to do that to South Africans. And I think that's a precedent that's important, that's worth setting against these politicians. Guys, I'm going to try and zoom past this because I like the show being sort of an hour and a half so I can give time for questions, and we're already at the hour mark. So I'm definitely going to be watching these various court challenges, and hopefully next week, as I said, Wednesday, have them all in like a nice big episode where we can have a chat and ask them how far they are in their various cases. I know you guys are super excited, as I am, for the fact that religious gatherings are back. Not that they should have been ever banned by the state, and not that the state should be in a position to tell us to congregate or not, but that's a separate issue. I'm just glad that, you know, hopefully this Saturday I'll be at Show. Hang on, did I get my dates right here? No, excuse me, the next week I'll be at Show. And I'll start seeing rabbis that I haven't seen in a while, man. Hey, it's been terrible. Like, it's terrible not to have, you know, be around friends and, you know, oh man, it's been, yeah. Moving on. So I'm glad that's happening. But I wanted to quickly say something about this because it actually kind of annoyed me a little bit. And it almost made me think that you might find that there are people in the presidency who are watching shows like mine and our videos. You know, guys like me, Ronaldo Khosa, Morning Shot, shout out to Ramon Kabanak. I've got a feeling there are people in that cabinet, especially maybe the younger ones, who are watching the show and are sort of keeping a pulse on the criticism. Because it's kind of funny that I mentioned things like the importance of faith and how we're a God-fearing country and how it is those individuals who are ever increasingly feeling or wanting to portray the wrath. And then suddenly the president comes out and speaks about the need for us to open up religious institutions and the like. That was kind of funny to me. That was just me literally just being a little bit conspiratorial on this one. But I'm glad to finally be able to get a chance to just see my rabbi, man, and sit down and talk to the homie. It's been forever. Shout out to you, Rav Bukat, if you're listening to the show. All right, I'm gonna move on, guys. As I wrap up, and I look to wrap up, in terms of the big issues that have made the news and things that I think you should be paying attention to, man, I can't leave without having spoken about this one. Guys, man, I took a very long time in a previous vlog, I lied, an episode of the BDL Show, to talk about a man, Mr. Collins Khosa, who was allegedly murdered by the South African Army and JMPD. Murdered for essentially, as it was then alleged, and it still is alleged, here's a guy who was sitting in his yard, having a few beers, literally observing the lockdown, and some sort of altercation developed where it saw him allegedly being beaten up by soldiers and JMPD in full view of neighbors, according to the allegations, and later this man is said to have died from his injuries, and indeed the post-mortem itself confirming that the man died of blunt force trauma to the head, is what it said. Let me just quickly go into this one because you're not going to believe where this story is now and the update to it. It's actually going to make your blood boil, as it did, I think, mine earlier when I opened up this link. If I can just quickly find it. There is an update to the story. An investigation, remember, that was ordered by the judge, an investigation ordered by the judge, multiple investigations, to be honest, that also had seen the suspension, finally, of the soldiers and the police, because they hadn't been suspended until this judge basically said, no, screw that, there will be accountability, suspend these damn assholes, suspend these monsters, whilst they launch an inquiry, an investigation also. So the latest now is the inquiry that was held in-house by the soldiers, by the South African National Defence Force, has basically cleared the soldiers of the death of Mr. Collins Khosa. Unbelievable. Actually unbelievable. It left me cold. And reasoning, and you'll realize how this is just it's a shit show. Oh man. I just know I'm getting super angry when I start swearing. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to read excerpts here that I've sort of highlighted. So the soldiers implicated in the death of Collins Khosa have essentially been exonerated by the internal South African National Defence Force investigation, which found that the altercation, according to them, the altercation was not the cause of his death. That's according to them, when, quote, taking into account the post-mortem report, that reads funny. So I read on. And by the way, a police investigation is still ongoing, however. Let me just quickly say that. The Army, I'm going to just shorten SANDF to Army, the Army Board of Inquiry's report is essentially attached to a court affidavit by the Army's legal advisor, who was reporting back to the High Court's judge, Hans Fabricius. Remember, he's the judge who said, I want to report on my desk before the 6th of June, given how slack things were initially. Anyway, so now the Army reports back to the High Court judge on the implementation of the orders he gave in this particular Khosa case. The Khosa family, of course, having gone to court, alleging that his death was caused by a brutal assault by the soldiers and Metro Police in Johannesburg. Remember, just a quick recap. The Khosa family had said in their affidavit that Khosa was strangled, slammed against a cement wall and the steel gate, and was hit with the butt of a machine gun. Afterwards, he couldn't walk, this is according to the family. He began to vomit, lose speech, they said. It was then a few hours later that his partner, his wife, and man, she's alone now with these 3 kids, she could not essentially wake him up and he had died. The post-mortem had described the cause of death as being, quote, blunt force head injury. According to the board's report, the post-mortem found, yikes, here comes a big medical word, forgive me if I butcher it, a subarachnoid hemorrhage involving the pons, which is just below the brain and connects the brainstem, connects it to the brainstem, and the cerebellum, or in English, ordinary English, bleeding between the brain and the membrane which surrounds it, which then pushed the brain down and compressed the brainstem, where basic life functions are located. But the Board of Inquiry's panel said, on the post-mortem report presented by the pathologist, there is no injuries linked to the cause of death. There are no scalp contusions and the skull is intact. So their arguments basically is that, because there's no cuts on the head or the skull itself doesn't seem to be damaged, they're basically saying that can't be linked to his death. That is a weird argument to try and make. And then I asked myself, did they maybe get a chance to re-examine the body and make that conclusion? No. And I mean, the article says it's not clear from the report whether Baker, this is the guy I think who the Army consulted, Professor M. Baker, it's not clear from the report whether Baker examined Khosa's body, nor whether the board's remark that there is no injury linked to the cause of death was based on, or whether, the board's remark that there was no injury linked to the cause of death was based on Baker's just opinion on the matter. It's infuriating. I really had to take a moment just to pause and gather myself, because we see this a lot. We see this a lot from a government that just does not want to take accountability and doesn't really take accountability seriously. Testament to the fact that it had to take a judge for it to even get to this point. Otherwise, this man's death would have just been notched up as another, oh, fuck it, we just killed another poor thing. That's how they view people. Oy. And listen to the mental gymnastics that the soldiers or the army is now playing, in then justifying why there was an altercation that allegedly led to this man's death. Listen to them play a word game here. The Board of Inquiry also found that it was Khosa and his brother-in-law, Thabiso Mavungo, who caused the altercation with the army members. Quote, the cause of the argument was the undermining of the two female soldiers by Mr. Mavungo and Mr. Khosa. The attitude of the two men was provocative, close quote. What? What? You mean to tell me if I insult a soldier, a female soldier, for whatever reason, I'm not absolving that, but you mean to tell me that if I assault or maybe I pass funny comments towards them, that I stand the real chance of having my ass whooped to death by soldiers? What? Is that really the argument the South African National Defence Force want to go with here? I mean, come on, guys. What's going on here? Like, what's genuinely going on here? This is a very weird world to live in, where the army can literally say, oh, well, the altercation was caused because these guys were maybe, flirting, or maybe they passed inappropriate comments or whatever. That's essentially the argument they're making. And here's the kicker for me. For an army that makes such a bold claim, here's the kicker. In summarizing the events, the Board of Inquiry said that Khosa and Mavungo repeatedly ignored their instructions, obviously the instructions of the soldiers, and argued with the female army members, who then called for backup, and the two men were forced to comply. I love how they leave that as just like a short sentence. They were forced to comply. I wonder what that force involved. The force used, open quote, was pushing and clapping in order for the men to comply. I don't know if they meant clapping as in English clapping or clapping as in Afrikaans. I can tell you clap here. But they use the English word for clapping. So in my mind, I'm thinking of soldiers who are pushing and clapping. Go, yay, go, yay. The fuck? This is weird, man. It's a weird defense. It's a weird flex by the soldiers. It's weird. So, open quote, the force used was pushing and clapping in order for the men to comply with the instruction. Eventually, the men complied and walked into the house. They walked into the house, according to the report. But the panel did not interview, and this is close quote, but here's the kicker, as I said. The panel, having made such a bold claim, the panel did not interview Mavungo, the brother-in-law, or family members, and instead relied on the statements in the police dockets and the court papers. I'm done. I'm done with just how stupid that is. So you're literally saying, oh, we talked to the very people who are implicated, and they tell us that they didn't beat them up. No, they just clapped and pushed every now and again. Clapped and pushed. Pushed and clapped. Oh, and then just someone happened to die. This is insulting. This is insulting, and it's infuriating, but I can assure you, this kind of shit likely happens a lot, especially to poor people, because poor people don't have the means. Because it had to take philanthropic attorneys high-powered attorneys to take this case on and support this family. So it tells me that poor people ordinarily who are subject to the state's violence often don't get this level of attention and investigative support. And that often it's just a government who just fudges the story and that's it. Screw you, you're done. Oh, yeah. I'm going to watch this one, guys. I'm going to keep an eye on this one because I think it's going to be a very big case to follow, because it'll be instructive for going forward on how we put constraints on those who hold guns on behalf of the state. Because you know my solution is that I be armed. I be armed and I go toe to toe with you. You try and bully me in an extrajudicial way that's not in the laws, within the law, homie, you understand that my barrel's going to roll on you and hammer's going to drop. Yes, I said that. If you threaten me and mine and you're trying to flex and none of it is legal, I'm going to go toe to toe with you, homie. Best believe that. I'm going to go toe to toe with you. But of course, we don't live in that society. We don't live in a wonderful society that accords people the right to bear arms like Americans. And it shows in moments like these where ordinary people are bullied because they can't defend themselves. And again, my gripe isn't with, because I know what people do. They always do this. But there's so many good officers. Of course there's good officers. Of course there's good officers. And I back those guys to the hilt. Because the observance and the maintenance of the rule of law is critical to building a free, prosperous, and property-owning society. Of course, that's not my gripe. That's not my argument. My argument is against those particular cops and soldiers who are literally evil fucking bastards. And just because they hold guns over you, think they can do anything with you and to you. And they do that because they know communities can't defend themselves. That is the violence of the state. I've told you this before. Any state decision, any state law comes with a threat of violence, very real threat of violence. And if you have evil men who are given those guns, then it is society that literally pays a heavy toll, a heavy price. And it's all fun and games when it's other people doing the dying. But what happens when they come to you and your household and they do this to you? Wouldn't you want neighbors to be able to support you and say, hey, what's going on here? Why is there police harassment here? Where's your where's the reasonable suspicion for what you're doing? Where's the warrant for this arrest? If a citizenry can't check policing and can't check those who exercise violence on behalf of the state, then you can best believe that the decisions they make will be arbitrary in nature and that they won't follow the rule of law. It's very important that citizens be able to defend themselves. And that was the intention, by the way, of the Second Amendment. It wasn't for hunting and gun shows and all that nonsense. It's to be able to say ordinary people must be able to defend themselves from arbitrary violence from the state. That's unjustified, that's extrajudicial, it's not within the law. Food for thought, food for thought. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up. And I'm going to open up to questions to you guys because I know you're probably dying to ask a few things here and there. Yeah, that's everything. I've covered everything. Yay! I'm gonna end off with a funny one. A lawyer in Cape Town, a chap, basically gets a haircut from his wife and looks in the mirror. He's like, "That's it. I'm done. I'm done with you, Sally, Susan, or whatever her name is. This is a shitty haircut. I'm going to court." And this homie literally launched court papers in the Western Cape High Court, trying to overturn the government's ban on salons and presumably nail places and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, the arguments he uses in court are good ones, such as the fact that, hairdressers and the like, this is their only source of income, and there's a lot of suffering, undue suffering on them at the moment. But it was the reason for why he went to court I thought was very funny. So here's another court case that I will be watching. The lawyer's name is Carlo Filyoun in the Western Cape High Court. Shout out to you, Carlo, for you know me, for taking on this really David versus Goliath battle. But the cause is a good one because, again, a lot of people who run these sort of businesses, these are not rich people, man. Like, these businesses are literally how they put bread on the table. And shout out to him, man, for supporting this. Because I think for me, the argument is if you're going to allow religious institutions to gather again and say something along the lines of, yeah, no more than 50 and social distance protocol, then why not open up for everybody and have those exact same rules if you're going to have the rules? Because you're still on this whole pandemic fear-mongering. Why not open up for everybody? It makes no sense for politicians to be the ones who decide winners and losers in society. It's a simple argument. And I think if they use that as a rationale for their argument in courts, they might actually win this one. They might actually win this one. Guy named Giano, I think was it? Yeah, Dudu Mieni actually wanted to raise that issue. Dudu Mieni lost her court bid, and guys like Alta and them, they won, basically declaring her a delinquent director. So she will not be, according to the law, allowed to hold a directorship position of any business for the next 7 years. So they won that. Dudu Mieni, of course, being the former chairperson of the SAA, who basically bankrupted it, or helped, quickly aided in bankrupting it, preventing it from taking certain deals which would have saved SAA, or at the very least given them a better financial standing. Deals with Emirates, for example. And what did she do? Basically, she made this weird, again, the ANC's vision of this shitty narrative that you need to reward people based on race. She had that narrative in her mind. And said, no, these deals need to go to black-owned companies and blah, blah, blah. And it was a reign of terror, man. Reign of terror by that lady at SAA. And thank you, Hashem, she's literally being declared a delinquent. So shout out to Alta for fighting that case. I think it was Alta and a few other groupings in that regard. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. That's all I had really that I've been watching in the news cycle. I don't know if there's any questions. I'm going to look out for those now as we sort of look to wrap up the show. Any questions, guys? What do we see here? Kerry van Schalkwyk saying delinquent director for life. Oh, I didn't know that. I think the law says 7 years, but okay, I didn't know it was for life. Let's see here. Alicia Allison, not a question but an observation. I call NDZ Professor Squirrel or Quirrell. The only reasonable explanation for this madness is that she is hiding Voldemort low under her headdress. Low. That's kind of funny. That's kind of funny. I see what you did there, girl. You're gonna fly to come back here. Like a little wall of fires when developing. That's kind of funny. I'm sorry, I enjoyed that. Shout out to you, Alicia, for that one. Creative. Dane Wenzel. Dane is saying, why is it hiding some of these comments? It's weird. Prostitutes, hookers, and sex bunnies have more rights these days. Lol. All right, guys, let's see what's else here. Sebastian has a question, finally. Can one compare the ANC to the NP, the National Party? I think yes. Quite rightly. Both of them traded on an identity politics. Both of them were, by and large, centre-left. I mean, a lot of people are surprised when I say that about the Nats. The Nats were centre-left. Look at a lot of the big, heavy industries and state-owned enterprises that we have to this day are a bequeathment, is that a word? But we basically got from the Nats. Big, heavy industry. And yeah, some may argue, oh, they only started those because of the sanctions and blah, 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 but that's also not necessarily true. The Nats were very happy to be the sort of politicians that pick winners and losers in society based on political diktat and not the market. And the ANC are literally cut from that same cloth. Why do you think the Nats, after a failed stint with the DP, literally happily found a home with the ANC? Birds of a feather, man. Birds of a feather. Both of them obsessed with race and racial classification. The ghost of that shit still exists. That's why I keep arguing that South Africa has never been a free, prosperous, and property-owning society in real terms. It's always had one form of big government and basically racialized leftist-type politics throughout its... Sorry, you lost me for a moment. I saw the buffering symbol, and as I always do now, I stop. Mandy Singleton, please, Big Daddy, explain. Oh, I didn't see the comment. Please, Big Daddy, explain how do you push for change on the ground without directing the people to a political party. Herman Mashaba seems promising. Your thoughts? Mandy, come on. Come on now. Come on now, Mandy. Come, let's talk. You and me, Mandy. Just ignore everybody else. Let's you and me talk. Mandy, Herman Mashaba, for all the things that I like about him too, because again, here's a guy who cut his teeth and built his name as, you know, a successful black entrepreneur, someone who built something from the ground. So I'll always respect him for that. Here's a guy who's advocated historically for capitalist ideals and market ideals. Heck, the guy used to be the chairperson of the Free Market Foundation. I'll always respect him for that. You know, he was one of those people I literally looked at as a hero. You know, especially as a younger chap. But look at what happened to him when he finally did join party politics. Look at what happened to him when he joined the DA and then became a mayor and then had a taste for power. And then suddenly all those principles flew out the window when he started kowtowing to the likes of the EFF, making decisions that seemingly favored and benefited the EFF. When the EFF said jump, he wouldn't even ask how high, he just jumped. And that's the danger of politics, when you don't build a coalition around you and a groundswell of people who actually buy into your ideas and understand the ideas. That's what happens when you jump headfirst into party politics without literally doing the groundwork. Because then you get swayed by any which who that holds power. And literally you saw a case where Herman Mashaba started making decisions for, again, even against his own party, the DA. They grew frustrated with him. Circle back to the interviews when that stuff started breaking, that people are unhappy. Circle back to the interviews. Look, remember how even the coalition partners, guys like the IFF and blah, blah, IFP, who are in the coalition government with him, were saying this guy is a megalomaniac and he's doing the bidding of the EFF. There's a political naivety to him that saw him throw out principles that he had built over 2 decades to literally become the skivvy of lefties in this country. Again, emphasizing the point I made that because there's no intellectual diversity in our politics, the people of lesser principles literally become absorbed in the system. So I think it's important for me, in terms of the work that I think I must do, my mission, hit the ground running, go to communities to first put the ideas, lay the seed in communities of the ideas of a free, prosperous, non-racial, property-owning society, a society based on liberty. Win that battle of ideas first. And then comes the politician, whoever that may be at that stage. Then comes the politician who then says, the ground's fertile, I can do this. Whether he may be a conservative politician, a libertarian politician, I don't care. But essentially, some charismatic chap is going to come and say, the ground is fertile. I can do this now. I can stand. I have a groundswell of support. That's how I see it. I don't know what you think about that, but that's genuinely my mission. And I think it's important for me to get it right. Because if you don't do the groundwork first and you just think you can go into the party politics, guys, super important to get those South Africans who believe in faith, flag, and the family behind the ideas. Behind the ideas. Once they get behind the ideas, I think the politics will follow that. Because it'll be politically profitable for people who are in politics to literally follow that herd, so to speak. All right, let me see if there's any other questions. Janine Greenwood saying good night. Good night, sister. Let's see if there's any questions. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up soon. Maybe in the next 5 minutes, because it is becoming a bit long. I don't see questions. Lots of comments, and thank you, guys. I am reading as many as I can. Yo, they're flying in thick and fast now. I saw one from Dylan. Let me try and find it. There we go. Dylan Thatcher. I like your surname. You share the surname as a British leader who I had great respect for. Still a politician, but actually I had respect for her. Anyway, if the government won't even sell land to a black man, why do so many people believe that they will expropriate it for free? Brainwashing or desperation? No. Here's the thing. people who believe politicians and the promises of, especially desperate people, I don't blame those people. I don't blame those people. And let me tell you why. If you know nothing else, and if your politics doesn't have an intellectual diversity that allows you to evaluate different ideas, competing ideas, and if there's no competing ideas, therefore, then you'll literally support he who promises you the more of an existing thing. Sorry, I know that sounds confusing, but it makes sense. So take, for instance, the battle between the ANC and the EFF. The ANC say, I promise you a free this, a free that, a free this, within certain limits because they govern. Then the EFF comes, not encumbered by governance and being in government, will say, no, I'll just promise you more. Now I'm even going to take from that group and give you everything from them. And it becomes a jerk circle of these same ideas. So that I don't blame poorer echelons of our society, people who've never had a shot at a hand up in society, from looking at what's available and going, okay, clearly I have to choose from what's available. But even then, look at the data. Look at the data. Remember, I always said, I don't just say things for the sake of saying them. I don't say things for the sake of just opinion. Look at the hard data and the evidence. Even in that situation of a lack of diversity, more people are saying, I'd rather not vote than vote for one or the other. I talked to you guys a lot about that 12, going on 13 million South Africans who just are eligible to vote, are of a legal age to vote, eligible to vote, but just say, screw it, I'm not even going to entertain this. I'm not going to vote. 12 to going on 13 million. And when you compare that 12 to the 10 million people who last voted for the ANC, that tells you a story. So it begs the question, what are those 12 million South Africans waiting for? And I put it to you, as I always do, that those individuals, along with those who vote but are dissatisfied, but those individuals broadly are God-fearing, law-abiding, family-orientated, and they look at our politics and they don't see any of those values being transmitted in our politics. Worse yet, those people are aspirational. They're just as aspirational as you and me. And they would love a society which is prosperous, which is free, property owning, and essentially leans on the side of liberty. But they don't see that in our politics. So someone has to do, guess what? The groundwork. The groundwork. Shake hands. Go to people's homes. Say hello. Share the ideas. Treat them with respect. Don't assume they're dumbasses. Treat them with respect. And actually say, here are the ideas. And I'm not going to talk about them in that high ivory tower language, which is what historically classical liberals have done. They sit in these ivory towers and they look down on even people like me. And they go, oh, look at that big daddy chap talking to the riffraff about our ideas. That's why that highbrow classical liberal society hate me to a large extent. Because I'm taking those ideas, which I know are fantastic, and I'm the street fighter of classical liberalism, as I always say. I'm the street fighter because I'm on the street. I shove a mic in your face and I say, tell me what you're thinking, what's on your mind, listen to these ideas, do you like them? That's my mission. What's yours? Support me, guys, support me. Because I keep saying this, like nothing changes. We're gonna keep being in our little hookies, saying things about each other, because no one's willing to actually escape your little hookie, so to speak, and speak to your fellow South African, convince him of your ideas. If they're superior, treat them with respect, treat them as rational beings, and sell your ideas. Don't just retreat into a little corner and go, oh, well, they're grant recipients, they'll never understand. Or they're poor, they'll never get it, they'll just keep voting ANC. Well, people will keep voting what's in front of them. That's the truth. Until someone comes and disrupts in a manner which actually respects those people intellectually by selling them the idea so that they can actually back the idea. But no one does this. And then we talk shit about each other. It's weird. That's one thing about South African society I've never liked. We're so quick to allow the politicians to divide us, as they want, by the way, that no one's willing to then do the work when it's in front of them. And we look to these weird guys who think they can just sort of jump in from the top. The likes of Musi Maimane, Herman Mashaba, etc., etc. Look at how they entered politics. They just jumped in from the top. And there's this weird hope that, they're going to change things. No, they won't. Because they've never done the work. They don't have a constituency. I'm selling you the idea that empower me to go into communities to build that constituency. So that when a politician does come, one we actually like, one who actually advocates for these ideas, he's got fertile ground. He or she has got fertile ground. That's the work, guys. Seriously, that's the work. If you don't do it, then we'll stay in these little hookies, talking shit about each other. Jen, easy question. A number of us have asked, do you share retweet articles you were quoting? If not, please do. Oh, sure. Sure, I'll happily share those links. Yeah, I'll close a lot of them, but they are available. I'll happily share them, Jen. Thank you so much for raising that. Guys, I do appreciate these comments that improve the quality of my show. Because as I said, I'm not used to, I wasn't used to this. If you've gone to my YouTube channel, you'll realize that ordinarily I'm in the street, I'm talking to people and producing content in that context. But I haven't really done this sort of live vlogging. It's very new to me. So I really appreciate comments that basically say, hey man, try this and do this and do that. I don't take offense. Even to people who use harsh language in criticizing me, I don't take offense, guys. All right, guys, I'm near concluding. Why does the screen... Oh yeah, sorry, I missed a question from someone here. Shout out to you, Mandy Singleton. I see you with that super chat. Ngiyabonga kakhulu. I appreciate you. All right, guys, sorry, just give me a moment. I'm just scrolling down because it flies up and then you have to sort of pause it. Joshua Carr is asking, what does Triple F stand for? Faith, flag, and family. It's the values that I fight for. The idea that, we're a God-fearing country and people derive a lot of their values from their faith. Whatever their faith may be, I don't prescribe. But a lot of us derive our values from our faith, and those values are common amongst a lot of people. So I'd rather fight for those people who share those values along those lines, values that transcend even the divisions that are made by politicians. So faith is the one, the flag is the other. The idea that we fight for country, not government, not politicians, country. I used to shout in my younger days, I was still in Natal, because I'm a proud Zulu. I used to shout for king and country in terms of all the work that I do, because I'm proud Zulu. I love my king. I love the Zulu people. We're a proud people. That's why I used to, even when I was younger, I used to take offense when people called me black. I'd say, no, I'm Zulu. I'm a proud Zulu. Because Zulu denotes me coming from a very proud lineage, a conquering people. And black makes me sound like a victim. Because look at the language that the lefties dress being black and quote-unquote blackness with. It's always a victim language. And I'm Zulu, guys. There's nothing victim about me. We're a conquering people. Anyway, that's a separate topic for another day. And the last F, of course, is family. The idea that I fight for South African families. I care more about individuals and families than I ever will my government and its politicians. Families count a lot more than any system of governance. That and the individual. Okay, guys, I'm nearing the bottom of the scrolling. Eleanor Wilson, question, where do you get your articles from? A mixture of sources, Eleanor. I will go through nearly all news sources and piece together stuff for the show like this. So I don't pick and choose, if that answers the question. Edward, shout out to you. Achi, I see you. All right, here we go. I'm going to take 5 more questions and I'll call it a night. Grace Ngwechana. Will you invite Bishop Begging or from KZN who want government to pay for churches' loss of income? I'm happy to invite him if he can give me his details. I don't think he'll come on. I don't know if he will, but I'm happy to have him come on. Thunder's Voodoo, I like that name. BDL, what's your email address? My mom wants to tell you a story of how her grandfather and his family had to flee East Germany, yes, the commies, while they built the wall because the Soviet government was hunting him. Absolutely. My email address, and this is for everybody, maybe I should type it in here. It's bdl@thebiglibertyshow.com, but I'll type it in here. Let's see here. Let's see. 3 more questions. Sebastian, I saw a question from you, but now I can't find it. Anyway. Oh yeah, Barry Swart. Why does our president do not hold press conference to answer our questions? That is a damn good question, Barry. That is such a good question. Like, again, it comes back to that point I made, that politicians in this country don't have an appetite for accountability. Look at, for example, what happened with the soldiers, and the whole story I went in, and how they killed Collins Khosa. If that can happen at a ground level, at a boots on the ground level, then waft it up all the way to the very top. They don't want to be held accountable. And to be honest, historically, they've had friends in the media who basically don't even ask this question themselves. Because a lot of our media is literally, they're old lefties themselves. They're lefties, and they're trendy lefties, and they love this government. They're the people who sold us, for example, the New Dawn narrative. So of course they're not going to be the sort of people who really want to hold this government accountable. And I've kind of spoken quite a lot about this on my other show, where I made the point that it's one of the reasons why I like American media. For as much as it has its various biases, and for as much as it has its various biases, by and large, they openly, or some of them at least, will openly state them and will literally go after politicians. And then you can pick and choose which media houses you want to consume the most of, or you can have a diversity, knowing that they hold diversity themselves. But each of them always make an effort to hold their politicians to account. And you can always tell what their slant is on any given president. Oh, yikes. Ooh, sorry about that, guys. I just sneezed. You can always tell what their particular slant is, given on who may be the president at any given time. That's why Donald Trump is a bit of a weird one, because he pissed off everybody. He pissed off everybody, including some pockets of Fox Media. Remember how a lot of the anchors on Fox, some of them even quit because they were like, man, Fox is shilling for this guy, screw that. But maybe I should have an episode on this in some other time. All right, guys, two more questions. Let's see. Sebastian, here's your question. David Rakgase case shows the government does not want anyone to own land. I agree. Also, EWC will take black land, black people's land. Black land law. No, you're right. You're right. There's no argument against it. You're absolutely right. Remember, the ANC talk a lot about doing things for blacks and doing things against quote unquote white monopoly capital, but really that's a ruse to a large extent. What they care about mostly is the National Democratic Revolution, their socialist communist doctrine, which seeks to control all levers of society, all means of control. And that will affect black South Africans as much as it will white South Africans. And in fact, the very sort of white monopoly capital they sometimes rail against, they're in the pocket with, so to speak. Look at how, for example, big corporates in this country schmooze up with politicians and often don't even criticize politicians because they know a lot of the laws in the book benefit them. Let me be precise and specific. You'll find there are certain corporates that say nothing about not being allowed to trade at the moment. And why? Because to a large extent, the sort of relationship they have, the crony relationship, it's crony capital, it's cronyism rather, the sort of relationship they ordinarily have is one where big business is happy for government to legislate and to keep passing laws that make the cost of business for new entrants to be incredibly high. In other words, blocking innovation, blocking smaller entrepreneurs who could have competed with big industry. So big business is very happy. They're very happy with the ANC and the way in which the ANC does things. But of course, at face value, they'll be like, oh, we're unhappy here and there. But no, they're not. They have a nice little cozy relationship where big business funds a lot of the state, high taxes and the like, in the acceptance that the laws that the state passes will protect them from smaller competition, and it creates this oligopoly that we have in this country. Again, we should probably have that conversation in another one. Okay, guys, one more question. Johan Delport say, have you seen the comments Jacques Pose made about Madam Pitbull and Pirate Cigarette Kingpin? No, I haven't. I'll look out for them. Stevie E says, BAT got paid off by Buffalo Bill. I don't know about that, but it would be funny though if it was. I can see them in sort of like some dark corner somewhere. And in the distance, in the faint dark distance of a dark alley, you see like little lights, little red lights every now and then. And as BAT comes closer to it, they can smell the smoke. Ah, Rothmans, that must be Buffalo Bill. And the closer they become, they suddenly hear, yes, you're right. It's me, Buffalo Bill. Come closer, BAT. Let me see you in the light. Shady ass government officials. Guys, let me call it there. Let me call it a night. Guys, thank you so much for watching the Big Daddy Liberty Show. I super appreciate every single one of you who have become absolute fans of the show. I'm hoping to turn you guys into the sort of zealots for liberty that I think we can be. I know that we can do this, guys, and it's all hinged on your support. So shout out to every single one of you who watched the Big Daddy Liberty Show. I will see you again on Friday on the podcast version, which is syndicated on High FM, and will soon, once lockdown level 3 is up and running, finally, I'll be traveling around the country again, talking to various local radio stations, asking them to syndicate the show so you can hear my voice on your local radio station. Guys, shout out to every single one of you who stayed for the entire show. Appreciate that. Remember, if you want to support your favorite fat boy, find me on Patreon. Guys, you do not have to overextend yourself. A single $1 a month is more than enough. But for those who do give more, much love to every single one of you. You'll find out very soon what it's all for as I put it together. So shout out to you guys. And remember, you can always support the Institute of Race Relations, who I work for, by becoming a friend of the IRR. That's their crowdfunding campaign. You can do that by SMSing your name to 32823. SMS will cost you R1, T's and C's. Someone will give you a call and sign you up for a monthly debit. They average about 90 Rand a month, but it's up to you as to what you can donate. Guys, thank you very much for watching. And remember, as I always end my show, never trust a commie.